Back to WD18, the Watford fan channel. Hope you're all doing fantastically well. It's Groundhog Day, isn't it? We've done a number of these streams over the years since starting the channel back in 2017. And once again, it's a managerial change in the dugout of Vicarage Road with Valérien Ismaël, the latest to leave the club, and Tom Cleverley coming in as interim head coach. A lot to discuss, a lot to dissect. But Sam made a very good point before we started today. We've discussed a lot of this before, Sam, in terms of where Watford are, where the problems lie. And there's a few things that have emerged over the last day or so, which we'll get into. But Sam, is anything new? Is there anything new to this at all? Or is it very much same old, same old?
No, I don't think so. I think if you watch our videos over the last few weeks since the Huddersfield game, I think the writing's very much been on the wall for a while. I think there were strong reports after we lost to Huddersfield that he'd been let go after the game. Obviously, none of that happened, and I thought they'd give him at least down until the international break and then assess at that point. But I think the last couple of performances potentially have been so worrying that they've had to make a change. It's slightly frustrating because we recorded a fantastic post-match pint yesterday, so make sure to go and check that out where we're talking about, do we think Val will get more time? Would you think he's gone? And then by the time we upload it, he's already been sacked, which was a bit frustrating, but make sure to go and check out our post-match pint from yesterday's game.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're in the Mad Squirrel talking Watford. And I think we came away from that game yesterday. The first half, I thought Watford were the better team, but the second half, we really did lose our momentum and our rhythm and what we were doing well in the first half. Charlie, I've seen a few tweets on your Twitter account at C Zazzera, and it's actually been mainly sort of pro Ismaël. Why is that? Do you feel this is a harsh sacking?
Yeah, I would have kept him. Just looking at context, looking at his whole body of work. I looked through all the fixtures today, all the league games, and I counted about 17 or 18 good performances. Not all those were good results. I didn't count like Rotherham the other week. I remember like Blackburn towards the start of the season. I think they beat us at Vicarage Road, but I thought we played well. I kind of tweeted just the context of the players, all the players that left, including obviously Pedro and Sarr, our two best players. We only spent 3 million. Georgie was most of that in the winter. And I think what he'd done to kind of get a young, hungry squad playing, and I thought that there was an identity. We saw how we wanted to use the fullbacks, how we wanted a bigger kind of forward man, how he wanted to use a holding midfielder, the two 8s or 2 10s bombing on. When we played well under Ismaël, and I looked at all the fixtures, and I think I counted about 17 or 18 out of 37 I thought were good. Sorry if I've just repeated myself there. But it just goes to show that I do think there was something that we were working towards. I think if you look at our current form, absolutely horrific. But if you go back to watch our video we done just after the QPR game on January the 14th, we were saying how much of a good job Ismaël's has done, and football's a cruel game. Football moves quickly. 2 months of bad, shocking results, not great football. I don't think the players down-tooled. I don't think they weren't playing for him. I just think he made some bad decisions, which ultimately cost him his job.
Does it feel like a different sort of sacking, Sam, in that respect, as Charlie mentioned? Because I feel like when you look at sort of the most recent dismissals, you look at Rob Edwards was definitely, in terms of maybe the board thought the form wasn't good enough and the style of play. Bilic was down to sort of the form again. I guess Wilder, it was the end of the season. But I felt like the difference with this one was, number one, the length of the time Ismaël was at the club. I think it was 41 games in total, which is the longest serving Watford manager since Javi Gracia. But I felt like only till recently, everyone had kind of, and maybe except Charlie, had swayed towards a change being needed, if that makes sense. It took quite a while for a lot of fans to get on board with the idea that a change should be made. Did this feel any different to dismissals we've seen before for you, or was it very similar?
I think so, in two regards. I think, first of all, in my eyes at least, I think things flipped really, really quickly. Like you said, Charlie, after that QPR away game, while we weren't great that game, I think we were all looking up at the table thinking, how many wins do we need to potentially sneak into the top 6? And then bang, since then, it's all pretty much gone downhill. So I think it's just the way that football is. It just changes ridiculously quickly. But while performance levels dropped off, I don't think it was a case this time that the players stopped playing completely like we've seen previously. I think under Rob Edwards or Slaven Bilic, I think it was pretty evident that the players weren't giving 110%, weren't trying. I don't think that's the case this time. I think there were certain players in there who potentially didn't fit into the way that Valérien Ismaël didn't want to play. I also think what's become quite apparent is probably his man management wasn't the best either, and I think that's probably been his downfall as well. But it's ultimately that some decisions that cost him, bringing Dan Backman back in goal for the last 2 games, I think has ultimately killed it. But yeah, I think it does feel slightly different just because of how quickly I think the mood's changed, and also because of the players not downing tools like last time.
Just on that quick mood change, I remember seeing Lou Orns. He's doing like some polls in the last couple of weeks, and I'm sure someone can dig this out. But I'm sure literally 2 or 3 weeks ago he did a poll saying Val in or Val out, and it was still Val in. So it's just those last 2 weeks. And like I think he done one recently. Do you think Val second was correct in the majority? But for me, I think coaches need more time. Like if we went to the end of the season and limped over the line and it was horrible, then it would have been a smart time to make a change. I don't think we would have got relegated to League One under him. I just think it's the culture that Gino's put us through, that even fans kind of edge towards that because they want to see the change. They're used to it, but I don't put all of our problems down to Val at all. I think he's done a lot of good work, and I'm sorry to see him go.
In terms of what you said there, Sam, about the players not downing tools, that does suggest that we have to kind of point towards the coaching in that respect, because despite maybe some people saying that the squad isn't fantastic, I think we probably deserve to be. I predicted us to be 14th at the end of the season. I think that's probably where we'll finish up, around maybe 12th to 15th this season. Do fingers have to be pointed at Ismaël with the coaching in terms of his man management, as you said, Sam, in terms of the form, in terms of the way he managed, particularly some of the younger players, if we're being completely honest, with Ryan Andrews. Ismaël Kone is another one who is not maybe frozen out to stretch, but certainly went through a period where it was very cold from the manager. I wanted to make sure we get both sides of the argument here. Do you think Ismaël can have any complaints when you actually take a step back and put everything together that he's been dismissed?
I don't think he can have many complaints, to be honest with you. I've been a huge fan of Val. I've been right behind him even until yesterday, really. Like I've said, I think I think he did a really good job with everything considered. Like Charlie said, with the player turnover in the summer. Here we go, the bingo card. The intangibles were back for the large period of this season as well. I just think, for me, it's the last month or so, some decisions have been baffling. Some, I think, over the season, I've turned a blind eye to. For example, I think Mateus Martins, while he had a promising start to the season, I think he's probably regressed. To be honest with you, particularly having played off the right-hand side, I don't think he's good enough there at all, to be honest with you. But yeah, like you said, Jacob, freezing out Ryan Andrews, Ismaël Kone being in and out of the team as well, not great. And I just think tactically, at some points, particularly the substitutions, I think could have been a bit better. Whether that's grounds to sack him now, I'm not sure. But I don't think if this change was made at the end of the season, he'd have had any complaints.
Sam, were you worried that we could potentially slip into a situation where we'd be in a relegation battle? Now, ultimately, it's a massive game going into Birmingham at the weekend. We mentioned our post-match point about how that can kind of determine the last 8 games of the season for us. Because if we win, that's kind of us safe and ready to go for next season. If we lose, then you get brought into that conversation about whether you can slip down the table. Do you believe, Charlie believes that if Ismaël had stayed, we would have stayed up and we wouldn't have gone down. Do you think if he had stayed, there would be a serious possibility of us being relegated because of our form at the minute?
Really difficult one. I'd have to say yes. I don't think we would get relegated, but I would say that I do think that we probably would have lost the game next week at Birmingham. We still might do. I'm not too sure. We don't know anything about Tom Cleverley, and we'll come on to that later on. But I think this Birmingham game on Saturday is absolutely massive. I think it defines our season because at the moment, I'm pretty neutral. If we lose that Birmingham game, I'd say we're in a relegation scrap. If we win that, I think we'll probably have enough there. But I think under Valérien Ismaël, we probably would have lost that game. And I think at that point, I'd have been seriously worried going into the international break. So yeah, it's a massive game come Saturday, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to stay out of a relegation battle.
We mentioned that form, and a lot of people in the live chat, understandably, have mentioned Andrew French's piece today. And make sure you do go and check out Andrew's stuff, because it gives us the breakdown and the lowdown of what happened during Ismaël's spell at the club. Charlie, let's touch on that, because there was a lot made of the January transfer business. There was a rapid decline in form from that point, really, as Sam mentioned. Up until that point, a lot of us, including, you go back to our streams on the channel, we were saying we've got a decent chance of playoffs here. We're getting a bit of momentum going. We're playing some good football. We're being probably efficient is probably the way to describe some of our football. It wasn't always the prettiest, but you felt that we were getting results. Then there was a piece in January, and we had all said that it was a left-footed centre-back, a striker, a winger, and maybe a central midfielder. Maybe three of those we needed. There was more in particular. We then read Andrew's piece, and it basically suggests that Ismaël had the opportunity to take a second or third option because they couldn't get his first options in, and he declined the opportunity to take up on those options. Now, I have to admit, I think that could have been the moment which not swung it, but I think he might look back on and regret not reinforcing those positions, because we all knew, I think a lot of Watford fans knew, we needed to strengthen in January to have a real chance of building some momentum, because it is a 46-game season and we do have a small, tight squad, which probably has been to our detriment in the end in some positions, because we've had to tweak here and there. What did you make of Andrew's piece and what he had to say? And did it change your perspective on Val when you read it?
Not completely. I think you have to think about the whole context of it, and imagine it. What we don't know the context of what players got offered. Imagine if we get 3 Udinese players who are on the fringes. How it must be if a manager doesn't fancy a player, you can't is there any point just taking them and then not playing them? We all knew we need reinforcements, and Jacob, I think you're totally right. That decision could have cost him just not having those extra bodies, and I don't think the board would have provided players who are that low. I think Andrew detailed first team players. I think we're interested in Peterborough centre midfielder. I know Lou Orns has said apparently we're willing to spend 5 million. I don't think that was exactly in the piece, but I think that decision has definitely come back to hurt him, along with other decisions, like Sam said, especially with Dan Batman coming back in. But I do sympathise with Ismaël, that he obviously felt that he built such a good squad and it would be enough to get him through it. And if he felt that any of these players, he didn't fancy them, I kind of see why he didn't want to bring them in. But in the piece, he talked about the responsibility that he had, and it was a lot more than other coaches have had. So he's responsible for the recruitment as well. And when you make that decision and then you see the run of form we go on, it's a big factor in how the Pozzos have made their decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also when you think about it, from what we've read, Ismaël was one of the few managers in the Pozzo era to have the control to make transfer decisions. It sounded like Ismaël had the opportunity to be really, really involved in transfer recruitment, which I think was the case in the summer. But it seems like, Sam, this January transfer window in the last 2 seasons has been the catalyst for managers at that point in the season. We take it back to the start of 2023. Slaven Bilic admitted that he should have done things differently while at Vicarage Road and to strengthen in January. Ismaël had the opportunity to strengthen in January, but didn't. But I guess the common denominator, right? And we mentioned Ismaël, is the Pozzos and the people who own the football club. And do you think a head coach can make a lasting impact at Watford whilst Gino Pozzo is the owner of the football club? Or do you think it is just very much short-term until it fizzles out?
No, nothing will change while these owners are still in charge, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's a really, really difficult one, because the approach, I think, from the ownership side of things changed. I think they've become a lot more standoffish over the last 12 months or so, particularly with Valérien Ismaël in charge. But I still think that they're just always itching towards that trigger button. And I think any moment there's a bad run of form, they will always pull the plug. And I don't want to say credit to them, but they did sort of hold fire at the start of the season when we saw that club statement thinking that he'd gone, but he signed that new contract. But no, to be honest with you, I think it's the environment and the culture created by the Pozzos has become so ingrained in the football club, into the mentality of the players and into the mentality of the fan base, that I don't think anything can change. I think the only true opportunity there was to do that was bringing in Rob Edwards, and we all know how that went ultimately. So, yeah, I mean, something that you said to me yesterday, Jacob, I don't want to throw your hospital pass there or anything like that, but when talking about Pozzo out, and one thing I've never really thought about is, but what happens next, if that makes sense? And I've been thinking about this a lot now, and I am saying Pozzo out with a lot more caution because of other owners we've seen in English football over the last 12 months and the damage that they've done to some football clubs. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting few months, I think, ahead in the stands as well as on the pitch.
I guess the question is, Charlie, and, you know, when we will get on to more Pozzo chat later in the stream, I think Anthony makes a really, really interesting point here in the live chat. And let us know your comments as always. We'd love to hear what you have to say. I don't think this debate is fair. Any other club sacks Val on this record, fine, no problem. Watford do it. Alarm bells. There is a certain narrative you see in the mainstream media when Watford make a change. Understandably so, really, with our record. Like, if you're not following a team and you see Watford making a change, you're going to instantly jump to conclusions. Just going back onto Anthony's comment here, what do you make of that? Because you're someone who didn't think it was fair, the fact they've sacked him. So, just on that record, can he have any complaints, really?
Yeah, but look what all the talk was before the season and why we brought Val in, and he was the man to kind of sort this culture out. And look at our previous season where we've had 3 changes, and every single change, none of them has worked. It's even been another podcast like predictions and people saying, will Watford keep a manager for just 1 year? And I just think that as a statement would at least show that the Pozzos are just open-minded enough to show. And maybe they are generally scared of League One. I don't think they should be, but I kind of echo what Sam said. I think he's bang on in terms of their actions and what they've done to it within the fan base, within the players. It has ingrained in the football club. And I was having to think, like, going forward, how are we going to approach this? And I was thinking about, all right, what do normal clubs do? Okay, we should really be looking at getting a good sporting director. Oh yeah, we tried to do that with Ben Manga. Look how that lasted. And then I was like, what positivity? How is it going to work under the Pozzo? And I came to the conclusion that I think we might have to just kind of fall on a very good coach who thrives and kind of against everything that's surrounding what it's like working under the Pozzos and go from there. But I just think that's so unlikely.
Just on Tim's comment here, Charlie, to throw over to you, but is there any proof Ismaël had sorted the culture out? He may have said he has tried there, but there's no evidence of that?
For what I saw on the pitch, I'd say there was. Last couple of seasons, we've seen players down tools. I've heard about players not turning up for meetings, players turning late. We saw his disciplinary at the beginning of the season where he was quite stern, and we didn't see that for the rest of the season. So I like to think that he did make an impact on the culture, and the players were still going for him. It was just the decisions that he made personnel-wise, recruitment-wise, saw with our Finn squad that we couldn't maintain performance, and once our confidence was gone, it was gone.
Matt says in response that I don't see a healthy culture. Kone was fuming again when he came off. The whole Andrews debacle was ugly. Reports of Ismaël being unhappy with comments Hamer made.
Kevin De Bruyne was fuming when he came off today. Sorry to interrupt.
You saying we're as good as City? Is that what you're saying?
Sorry to interrupt that comment. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Few more comments though. Tim says, I do agree, however, that the owners have set a bad culture amongst the fans. A lot of fans wanted Javi at the time we sacked him, and look how that turned out that season. And the fact of the matter is, we've been in decline since the 2019 FA Cup final. Yeah, there was a promotion in that, but on the whole, it's been going one way, Sam. And just on that, because people, as you've mentioned about sort of the Pozzo out comments, and a lot of people, you know, I'm making out like I've got loads of people in my DMs, but a couple of people have added me saying, look, are you Pozzo out? And for me, it's been pretty clear for some time that a change at the top is what's best for this football club. But I also think it's got to the point now where I think that's what Pozzo himself wants as well. I think the way the squad's going, I think some of the decisions he's made with the squad, whether that's with Batman's extension, with Ngaki's extension, with our transfer business very much on a shoestring budget, it is just all sort of gearing up for a change to be made at the top. And they've given us some great years. I mean, we do have to say that, you know, look at the sort of Premier League stint. I mean, for a club like Watford to have 5 years in the Premier League and get to the FA Cup final, that's all well and good. but the trajectory of this football club is only going one way at the minute, I think, under this ownership. And it's just, for me, Sam, it's the same. Like, I mean, look, we can all say about Ismaël, I think he can't really have any complaints, but the bigger picture is the problems, and they start at the very top, because it's undeniable that Watford are in this situation, because not only our form recently, but we've got a paper-thin squad. The organisation as a whole has been acting pretty dysfunctionally. We've sacked the head coach again, but it's yet again, rinse and repeat. And the one constant throughout that is Gino Pozzo. So, I mean, it wasn't really a question, it was more a thought, but I know people have said to me, you Pozzo out. I think it's been pretty clear for a while, and I know a number of people have feeling the same. I do have to caveat that with that you have to be careful what you wish for, in the sense that it isn't always greener, but I think the way this football club is going, a change has to be made as soon as possible. Is there anything to add to that?
No, without doubt, definitely. I mean, something you mentioned there in terms of the constant there being Gino Pozzo, very different circumstances, obviously. But when Gary Neville was going on his weekly rants last season about the Glazers at Man United, it was always talking about how weak leadership at the top trickles down to the whole football club and onto the pitch and into the very sort of bread and butter of a football club. And that's what we're seeing at the moment. I wouldn't say necessarily weak leadership is the right term for it, but poor leadership, irrational and erratic leadership, I think it's completely, the last few years have been an absolute shambles, and it's been difficult to watch. There have been some good moments over the last few years since COVID, but on the whole, like you say, Jacob, we're only going one way, and that's not up at the moment, to be honest with you. And if things carry on the way that they are, even next season, if not this season, we are going to have I'm seriously worried about getting relegated in the next couple of years, to be honest.
Well, this is the thing, right? And we look at the bigger picture, Charlie, about what can happen. And people are saying Pozzo out, understandably so. And some people are very much careful what you wish for. As Odger says in the comments, don't wish for a Bassini comeback. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But I guess the question is, Charlie, with the way we've operated this season, and you made a great point about Val probably getting the maximum out of these players that he's got. And especially in the first half of the season, we've got to, say fair play to Val. He got us in a position where we were dreaming of playoffs. Now, I don't think that probably would have been the best thing probably for us, because if we had gone up, then it would have been messy. But the point is that I think Ismaël actually probably at one point and a couple of points got the best out of the team at his disposal. And that's no disrespect to the players that we've got. But we've got a lot of young players, a lot of players with not a lot of experience, players that are unproven. I mean, Ben Hamer, I always use as an example, is our number one this season, but hadn't been a number one in over a decade. So we had loads of players that kind of just merged together, and Val managed to get quite a bit from the players he's got. But is it a concern that the way we're going in, especially in the transfer market, that we're going to get to a point where we can't spend a lot? We're relying basically on the managers to get the most out of it. We're not really using the academy, if we're honest. Like, I mean, Andrews is one in a blue moon. Morris, you could say potentially, but we've kind of had to use those guys. Shaq Ford potentially coming in. My point is it too negative to say that this is only going one way at the minute?
Yeah, the trajectory is there for all to see. It is a bit worrying. And my worry is just kind of the structure of the club. Like, no sport. Well, we've got Nani in at the moment. That seems very part-time. Haven't heard anything about any plans to try and recruit for a new technical director, sporting director. So at the moment, we've literally got Gino Scott and Tom Cleverley in as the interim head coach. So it just feels like I like to bring up like famous memes on this stream, but it feels a bit like Ian Bill. We've just got nothing left, and yeah, it is a worry. But we can't ignore we have got talent in the squad, and if we do, like I said, fall on a half decent coach. Val was a half decent coach as well, but you look at like Danny Roll, the job he's doing at Sheffield Wednesday. They've got a lot worse squad than we have, and nice little stat for you. Danny Roll has won more championship games this season than Watford have. So it just shows what could happen if you get a good coaching. Because for me, I think the manager is the most important position. So yeah, it is worrying, but for me, like, I'm always optimistic. We try to be constructive, try to look forwards. Yeah, there is that concern, and the reality is what it is. But I'm just trying to see how we can be positive, and that's what I was thinking today, especially with Tom Cleverley coming in and seeing how he's going to do. So I don't know if you want to talk about Clevs now, but I think we spoke a bit about it on the stream yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah, two things before we get on to Clevs coming in as interim manager at Watford. The first is, and while we've got over 200 of you watching, it's a great time to mention the WD18 Cup on the 23rd of March at Westart Sports Club. The link is in the description below to donate, to get involved in our auction, to get involved in our raffle. And if you want to turn up on the day, 23rd of March at Westart Sports Club, should be a great day. We've got all the teams confirmed. Hopefully, as Laura mentioned at the top of the show, I've lost your comment, but hopefully Clevs will still be able to attend on the day. Now he's got other things to worry about. But look, there was rumours that the biggest job he's got to the end of the season is managing Lad Speak Out FC. So you never know. But yeah, let us know. Let us know if you're coming down. Drop us a DM at WD18 Fans on our social channels. But it should be a really good day, and we'd love for as many of you to be there as possible. And the second thing is some of your comments. That was it. I'm going to read them out. So any comments while I'm just having a flick through, let us know. And I'm going to chuck it over to the lads. Charlie, Sam, jump in if you have any thoughts on some of these. Fabian says, for next season, I would take Steve Cooper or Scott Parker.
Oh, not Scott Parker. Please, not Scott Parker. Sorry, just my opinion there. If you thought Valball was bad, I've got Bournemouth friends and Fulham friends, and they absolutely hated watching Scott Parker ball, even though he got them both promoted. Apparently, it was just terrible. So,
guys, quick question, and everyone in the comments, let me know what you guys think. And I know it's still a bit raw, but do you think maybe this week we should do early shouts for potential next Watford head coach, a potential tier list, or some sort of video? If you guys would be interested in that in the comments, let us know. I haven't thought about it too much yet, but
why can I just see Paul Ince being appointed to the end of the season at some point?
I've still said, I'll always say it, Claude Puel will manage Watford one day. He's the most Watford manager ever.
That is so Watford.
For me, I think that, the two names that I really, really want, without ruining it for a future video, I don't think we'd get either of them, but the two down there in the league now, Danny Roll or Marty Cifuentes, I think one of those two would be a fantastic appointment, but I don't think either of them would come in realistically.
I've got a challenge for the live chat. What is the most Watford appointment you could see next season? So we've got one, which is Carlos Carvajal. Is available, quite Watfordy. That someone said Diego Martinez. He's had a couple of interesting jobs recently. Did well at Granada. Was very highly rated by Pozzo. Warnock is available, says Matt. A bit of discipline in there. Gracia coming back. Roy Hodgson. What would be? And people are saying do a manager video. So we'll get that sort of view in the coming days. A few more comments, but let us know your most Watford appointment in the comment section below. HJ, any chance they're looking to sell in the summer, not spending, getting rid of staff so we're more sellable and a new person can come in and do what they want to start again? Could that happen? Anthony says, perhaps the issue has been a case of head coach first, playing style second. Maybe we should double down as a club, instill a philosophy and hire accordingly. Will mean players not always resetting. I think you're absolutely spot on there, Anthony. But I think that is just the Pozzo model. It's always been the conductor of the orchestra is always changing rather than the orchestra itself. Keith says, I generally think Pozzo wanted this one to work, but I don't think Val left him with many options. The football was awful and only going one way. RS9 says the culture at the start of this season was pretty good. Weirdly, I'm saying that Dennis is the cause, but since he came in, results did go downhill massively. I think there's more to it than just Emmanuel Dennis coming in personally. But I understand your point. This is an interesting one, guys. Does Scott Duxbury have a part in this? He's also constant through this multiple-year mess, Sam.
To be honest with you, I've been so confused over the last 18 months, 2 years with the amount of changes we've seen behind the scenes with Gioretta coming and going, managers having more control than others, Manga coming and going, Gianluca Nani coming in. I don't really understand what Scott does nowadays other than just sort of keeping the business side of the football club running. I'd love to know what he does to deserve £1 million a year. That's no disrespect to him, but it's an extortionate amount for ultimately a football club that's been failing for the last 3-4 years.
I think that was interesting on Company's House, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I did have a look on the sort of the finance and stuff, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but the wage had very much stayed the same when we went from the Premier League to the Championship, which is an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, no repercussions there, it seemed. Yeah, look, I mean, fair play. I'd never turn down getting £1 million a year, but
Mate, what are you talking about? That's your weekly wage of this show, mate.
It's what WD18 are bringing in. Yeah, I just love to know what he actually does to deserve that money. But I think what people have started to realise, because I remember previously when things did start to get a bit shaky after the FA Cup final, anger would very much be directed away from Pozzo. So originally it was Filippo Giraldi. We've seen it be towards Scott Duxbury, Cristiano Gioretta, even Ben Manga to an extent, and all the head coaches. But now I think, over particularly last season, post Rob Edwards, I think it's hit the point now where people go, yeah, the constant here is Gino Pozzo, and that's where the problem lies.
Couple more comments before we move on to dedicated Cleverley section, which is a positive because we all love Clevs. Rio's 2 out of 14 wins in the league since Blackburn away. Ishmael can have no complaints, to be honest. Jim, thanks so much, mate. Great to talk yesterday, lads. Pity the result and they're sacking off it. Val, if you didn't check out our post-match pint, make sure you do. It's always a good one, Charlie, because that's our favourite bit of content to record, right? Are you putting this above the sort of Sunday night, late night, drive home streams?
Always enjoy a Sunday night with you guys, but seeing you guys in the flesh over a pint of sumo, you can't beat it.
So good. Anthony, the timing of Manga's departure and his team would have caused confusion going into the window, you think? But there's so many comments. Thanks so much. And as Nick says, at the time, there's 179 watching, and come and get the likes going. That'd be much appreciated. It really does help us out. So, Cleverley, Tom Cleverley, ex-Watford captain, current or now former under-18 Watford coach, will replace Valérien Ismaël as the interim head coach at Vicarage Road. Tom Cleverley's staff will be confirmed in due course, but we're waiting for an announcement from the club. We mentioned in the post-match point, Charlie, actually about Clevs coming in. It was rumoured. A lot of Watford fans have kind of put 2 and 2 together. Ishmael goes and Clevs comes in, and Sam mentioned about it being an internal appointment. Omar Rizza is departed along with Ishmael, and I think Dean Whitehead has left with Ishmael as well. Charlie, Tom Cleverley coming in. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's weird. Like, we don't know anything more than anyone else, but it felt like everyone was kind of talking about this being a logical step that would be made. So even before yesterday's game, building up like what a potential sacking, which we expect coming, I was kind of trying to get my head around the thoughts of it. And I think we said on post-match point yesterday, and I put the question to you guys, will we see a bounce from it? And what I've kind of after having a think about it, I think, can we get him in? I think let's give him till the end of the season. I don't think there's a point. For me, I wouldn't like to see us like giving the Birmingham game and try and find someone to do the last 10 or 9 games of the season. Like, what's a manager? I can't know any manager in the world who's going to be able to do anything different for 9 games without Watford squad up. That might be incorrect, but I think Tom knows all the players. Literally was our captain last season. He's got into coaching. He's been doing a great job with the under-18s. They've already made a final. Some really good start for him. So he knows the players, and I think we need a bit of good vibes in the camp. We need some good vibes. I think he won't overcomplicate things. I think he'll get players in their best positions. I think he'll maybe have that kind of more arm around the shoulder and that encouragement that some of the players need more than others. And yeah, I'm hoping he comes in, gets some positive results, and we kind of have a positive end to the season. I'm just a bit worried, and we talk about. I do think Watford have a lot of similarities with Man United recently in terms of ownership. So I fear about if he'd done really, really well, and then he got the job on a permanent, and then like the start of next season ends badly, and we're shafting a club legend. I think for his coaching development as well, he's only had 1 year as a coach. I'm hoping that the club have kind of ensured whatever he does after this interim period, he's got a position back in coaching with the club, because he's made a really good start and he's only 1 year into his coaching. So, look, Klebs is a great guy. Like he's even said he'd come to our charity tournament. So hopefully he can still commit to that. And yeah, hopefully he's going to bring some smiles on some faces, and we're going to have a positive end to the season.
Sam, I guess the one thing that Charlie did say about whether a manager can get more from the players, I think there are managers that get probably more from the players in terms of the form that we've been on and the style of play we're seeing recently. Maybe not that first half against Coventry, but let's be real. The last 12 games or so has been pretty bad in terms of the quality of football. I guess the one thing that can be changed immediately is confidence and vibes. I know we've said that. Look, prime example of it, Xisco Munoz. He came in after Ivic. Everyone was on the floor. We had Troy Deeney on TalkSport basically going in on Ivic. We had players. William Troost-Ekong had to after Xisco came in, put a meeting together. But the one thing you'd say about Xisco was he brought the energy and the vibes. Now, I'm by no means saying Tom Cleverley is the same sort of coach, but one thing it does get on board is all the fans, because all the fans have a lot of time for Tom Cleverley for what he's done at the football club over 2 spells. And he knows the club. He knows the values of the football club. He knows how important the town is to the community. The club is to the town and to the community. What do you make of this appointment? Does it make sense to you when you look at this one?
I think there's a difference between Clevs and Xisco regarding the fact that with Xisco, I think he had a fantastic team in front of him, and all he had to do was get the confidence going to get everyone playing again. I think with this one, I think it's not as simple with the fix. I know what you meant. I think it will give everyone a confidence boost, and I think his man management skills, potentially because he's been in that dressing room, will be a lot better. I just worry that Clevs could potentially not just tarnish his Watford legacy through doing this, but tarnish his future managerial career through this. I know potentially people don't really look at getting sacked by Watford as too much of a negative nowadays, because it just seems to be the norm for a lot of people. But I just worry that if it does go badly, it could set him back a few years. And I think he's always been someone who's come across as a really, really good leader and a really good football person. But my slight worry is that this could hold him back. And I do hope that it does go really, really well. But like I've said, I don't think anyone can succeed in this job at the moment.
So one point that people have made, Charlie, about Tom Cleverley coming in is the fact that he was a captain in a couple of dressing rooms, which was pretty toxic and got a little bit... Okay, maybe toxic is that the right word, would you say? Divided is probably the best word. Particularly the season we got relegated under Hodgson. I remember that dressing room was pretty much all over the shop. And people are a little bit concerned that a captain was a captain in that environment, and then will he be able to command the authority and the responsibility from the players that he has here? Do you think that will be a problem?
I actually think he's probably inherited the best group he would have in the last 2 or 3 years. I think if he came in when Chris Wilder came in last year, I think that group, there was a couple of players who would have been difficult to manage. And I think the season before, when we were in the Premier League, we had a lot of players who were there to play in the Premier League. So I actually think Val's actually set him up to... we've talked about the team are together and they play with togetherness and have a good spirit. So I think we've got some good characters in there, people who are willing to run. And I just think I'm hoping he can put a fresh approach on things, maybe tweak a few things, and the players respond well to it, and we get a couple of results.
A couple of comments. One for you guys. Can any of you confirm if Clevs has the last 9 games, or are they looking for a permanent manager now? So there's one game before the next international break. It wouldn't surprise me personally if Clevs got the next one and they looked for someone else for the last 8 games. Maybe depending on how the Birmingham game goes. If we get a really good win, it wouldn't surprise me that they just go Clevs. You could have it to the end of the season, because at that point we're effectively safe. If we lose, I would not be surprised if they went, you know what, we'll bring someone in for 8 games. And one man who obviously is well known for being in a relegation battle in the Championship is Neil Warnock, who's just left his post at Aberdeen. So that's one to maybe look out for. It really would not surprise me. Ian says, in my opinion, this is a sensible change that should ensure that we are playing Championship football next season. Good luck, Tom. Let's start with 3 points next Saturday at Birmingham. Tony says, let's hope the players will give 200% for Clevs for the next 9 games. We have a tough run in, but we have the talent to get through this. A few more comments as well. I guess, Sam, a great one down is, what team do you think he'll go with for Saturday? If you had to put a predicted Tom Cleverley first Watford starting 11 as Watford head coach, what do you reckon it will be?
Difficult, because I think on the one hand, you're thinking, does he go with the players he knows, or the players who have played, for example, more this season and more established? So the obvious one would be, he played with Dan Backman for a few years. Does he go with that, or does he bring Ben Hamer back in? I think he's got to bring Ben Hamer back in, to be honest with you. what I'd like to see, and probably not for the Birmingham game, but let's say he stays, and I don't think he will. I agree. I think with you, Jacob, I think he'll probably have the Birmingham game, and then we'll change it again in the international break. But if we are safe, it would be quite good to see if he's able to bring through any of the academy players. Obviously, he probably worked quite closely with Charlie Daniels already in the academy setup, but it'll be a really, really good opportunity to give the likes of Greaves more minutes and potentially a few others as well, because you never really know how good someone is until you throw them in. And the best example we've got of that is Ryan Andrews, because I'd never heard of him until we see this kid against Reading in the FA Cup, and all of a sudden he's one of our best right backs. So yeah, I'd be really keen to see that if we can get over the line with safety. But yeah, no, I just think, sorry, Charlie, before, I think the wording of the statement was interesting, because I think if he did have it till the end of the season, it would have said caretaker rather than interim. So yeah, I'm not sure what you make of that.
I'm just thinking, and we've heard a bit about, let's just throw the kids in. If we are in a bit of a precarious position, do we want to be throwing kids in a high pressure environment where we might be in a relegation scrap? I personally think he's going to keep it as simple as possible. I think he will look at what was successful earlier on in the season. I think he'll look at his players like Jake Livermore, who's probably the same age as him. He'll need that leader, that's someone that he can trust on. I think Wesley Hoot's obviously going to stick there. He needs players that he can rely on, and I think he just might make a few changes here and there just to freshen things up, but can't see wholesale changes. But interesting what you guys are saying about, you think he's kind of like a one-game audition, but
Billy McKinley walks and Tom Cleverley can run.
Good shot. I just can't think of, like, I don't know, the Pozzos may surprise you, but what manager's going to want to come to 8 games?
The only thing is, and I'm going to flip it. And Sam, by the way, mate, I know it's getting close to 9:30, so if you need to jump,
No.
Strap yourself in. If you flip it, and this is me probably just thinking, I've just gone past the point of sort of like being negative about Watford. But if you flip it and you're a manager coming in, let's say you're a Neil Warnock or someone like that, like a Chris Wilder last season, he's going to come in with 8 games, right? You're either going to keep your kind of get your name out there again, get a good sort of paycheck. It's 8 games. It's probably not going to define your managerial career because you know what you're walking into. And I know what you said, Sam, about a younger coach with Tom Cleverley, the fact that he's come from the under-18s. If it goes badly, yeah, okay, we're going to look at it a bit differently. But I think everyone would know, it's almost got an asterisk next to it, the fact that he's come in at this point in the season with this situation. I actually think if I'm a manager out of work, I'm jumping at the opportunity to have 8 games at the end of the season. If it goes wrong, no one's really going to say anything. If it goes well, you look amazing. And even then, you get a payday. So what do you reckon?
Yeah, I've always said I think it's probably one of the easiest jobs in world football on a surface level, because you do well, happy days, you do badly. No one looks at getting sacked by Watford as necessarily that bad of a thing anymore, and you get paid off. So, yeah, it's a pretty simple transaction, I think.
Let's do a predicted lineup for Saturday. We do need to do that because the fact of the matter is, Pete's just said Cleverley has a job on his hands. Chatford-Detsy's injured. Hoot's banned.
Good point.
Two crucial, particularly Hoot, because I mean he's walked into that. Charlie, does Ben Hamer come back in as well? You know, there's a lot up in the air. It's going to be a fascinating announcement at 2:00 on Saturday.
Yeah, I'd go Ben Hamer, Ryan Andrews, Porto, who I thought played first half. I thought he played well against Coventry, and then probably get Matty Pollock in there as well. I think Sirialta came in for the Millwall game, and I thought that wasn't a bad shout because he dealt with a lot of aerial duels. But I'd have Pollock, Porteous, left back. I thought Lewis played pretty well against Coventry. I don't know about you guys. Jake Livermore as a 6, Kone and Kayembe as the 2/8s. And then I'd have Dennis up top, Espria, and maybe like Martins. It doesn't sound too different, but I think that's what my shout. Any changes from you guys?
Well, Sam, I was going to throw this one over to you. Who's Tom's skipper for Saturday, do you reckon? Is it going to be Backman?
Wow, there's no Wes, or let's say Backman doesn't come in. It would probably be Joe Livermore, wouldn't it? I assume it would be. Only change I'd make, Charlie, from what you said. I know he had a better game the other day, but I still think I prefer James Morris at left back to Jamal Lewis, to be honest with you.
Why is that, Sam?
I feel safer all around with James Morris. I don't think he's necessarily better going forward than Lewis. But I think defensively, I think he offers us slightly more. And I just think Lewis has been too much of a liability at times this season.
Right, a couple of comments to wrap up. Thanks so much to everyone who's watching. I think this is officially record numbers on a live stream. We've got over 230 people watching live, which is crazy. I don't know how much of a stand that would fill up at Vicarage Road. Maybe the 1881. I don't know how many people at the 1881, Sam.
Ooh, I'm not sure, to be fair. I mean, something I said yesterday, actually, just on the topic of the 1881. I do hope that Cleverley coming in could reignite some sort of atmosphere at Vicarage Road again, because something that we saw yesterday, I think that the players gave the fans something to feed off, and the atmosphere was probably the best it's been in months for a 20-minute period in the first half yesterday. So I'm hoping something like that could be reignited. Leeds at home, as it will be potentially his first home game if he's here after the international break, under the lights on Sky Sports. You never know. Getting me excited again.
Someone did just mention actually a fantastic point. What are the odds of Deeney coming in as in his backroom staff?
I could see it. I think I think Robbo.
They're pretty close, by the way. It's Cleverley and Deeney. When they were back at Watford, they always spoke really highly of each other.
Troy was at the game the other night as well, I believe, at the Swansea game. I'm not sure if there was anything behind that one. It wouldn't shock me, to be fair. I think Robbo as well is probably someone who's going to be spoken to. Has
to be. And Laura, and shout out to Laura, long-time viewer of the channel. She sits in the upper Graham Taylor, and she noticed that Tom Cleverley was in one of the corporate boxes for the last two games, and it was a little bit off. She hadn't seen him there before, so maybe this was something that had been mentioned before it actually happened. I'd imagine so, with the way the Pozzos operate. A couple of comments on Tom Cleverley just to wrap up today's show. Good to see you, Rio. Clevs could either win a couple on the bounce and we're safe, or we could lose the next three. Very easily could, and we will only be a couple of points above the drop, and nothing would have changed. So it makes Saturday a really, really big game. And Matt Sawyer makes a great point. We shouldn't forget that Tom Cleverley has a good history of managers he's worked under in his playing career. Quite a few at Watford as well. If he has learnt just a few things from them, he might be all right. Maybe a call to Sir Alex Ferguson as well, potentially on the cards. There was just lastly, Sarah, Charlie, someone who works for the Coach's Voice and meets a lot of managers. What do you reckon the dynamic will be like for Tom Cleverley coming in as a manager and having to manage players that he's played with quite recently? Is that an issue? Because you look at someone like Dan Bachman. On the top of my head, I think of.
I don't think there's. Well. Yeah, but I just don't think there's as many as you'd expect. Like if it's like just because of the turnover that we've had, especially in the summer. So, it's an interesting switch, and sometimes we've seen it work really well. Sometimes we've seen it not work in terms of that player manager changing. I can't think of too many examples off the top of my head where you see a player go straight into a head coach role. Like we said, I just encourage coaches to get your experience through the youth level and get used to putting sessions on and communicating with players. So this is going to be a steep learning curve for Tom, and hopefully it's going to help him for better, even if it doesn't end up too well. I kind of more thinking about this stream. I think it would be a really, really shrewd move if the Pozzos could convince Robbo to come back to help Clevs until the end of the season. Even if that's not the case, Gary Rowett's a manager who has got a lot of championship experience. I don't know if he'd come to Watford. I think me and Sam we met him, didn't we, in the summer? And he had a little chat with Tommy, commented on Watford, which is common knowledge. But I think that might be a good shout. Got championship experience. Robbo knows the club as well. So after this chat, I'm thinking get on the phone to Robbo. We had him on the stream when he said about he would walk to Watford if given the opportunity. So I think that could be a shrewd move from the Pozzos. Or is it too much of a PR move? I don't know. You can't win.
I don't think you can win at this point in that respect. The players that I can think of at the top of my head that Cleverley played with rather, and even he played last season, didn't he? So you look at someone like Dennis, Sema, Bachman, Wesley Hoop briefly, Sierralta.
Also, he was injured for the whole of last season, wasn't he? Though he got injured on. Ironically, I think it was his last ever touch in professional football was scoring a goal. If you remember, he scored against Burnley, didn't he? And did his ankle when he scored, and then didn't play again for the rest of the season.
Yeah, interesting to see that. Ngaki is another one that Richie's mentioned in the comment section. Sorry, just last few comments before we wrap up. And if there's any final thoughts for the guys, thanks so much, mate. Smash a like for the guys, make great stuff. Really appreciate that. Lee says JJ from the USA is manager wearing that lovely yellow furry coat in the dugout. Charlie, what did you think of the clobber?
He's got swag.
He's just so cool, isn't he, Jay? I honestly think he could put a bin bag on and look cool.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. Cool dude.
Very cool.
What a player he was, by the way.
There's been so many football cliches thrown out today, by the way, that I've thought of. I hope if Dave's watching.
You slipped in a by the way just there as well.
I love the way Sam is pretending like he didn't deliberately try and get in.
It was Jacob. It was when I was trying not to laugh when you went, Clevs knows the club as well, and that's so typical cliches.
He gets
comments put tweet out. I thought Tom Cleverley spoke really well at his first press conference. Can't wait for that.
Tom Cleverley bleeds yellow. Anthony says Cathcart is part of the backroom staff, now retired, some United pedigree, good mates, etc. You never know. Sam, Charlie, just final thoughts. I always do this. Just anything I've missed, anything you want to mention. That might be my cliche, by the way. We mentioned football cliches on the show. Mine is always final thoughts. Sam, you've always got something that I've missed, maybe.
I think it was good, nice therapy that we always have on a Sunday night. It seems. I think we didn't expect to be recording tonight after the post-match point yesterday, but as I've said after the last few videos, there's a serious possibility that Watford could be dragged into something we're not going to like towards the end of the season. So look, let's just get behind the team, get behind Tom Cleverley on Saturday, and it's pretty much a home game for me actually. Birmingham away, it's about 15 minutes from where I live here. So let's just get behind the team and hopefully it's a good one.
Charlie?
Yeah, no, echo what Sam said. I've come off this feeling kind of a bit lighter and smiling. So hopefully everyone that's been watching feels the same. We did speak about the pressing issues at the start of the stream if people have just joined in later. But look, we know we're not in ideal situations with the way the club is. But I think us three are very much in the thing. If you don't laugh, you're just going to cry. So try to get some enjoyment and pleasure. And look, even if we are, at least now we've got a bit of a target for the season, and it's not totally drifting. So just wishing Tom for our full support. Like I know that the away fans who've travelled unbelievably this season are going to get in good numbers. Birmingham. So just cheer the boys on, and then hopefully if we get a positive result, let's get the Vic loud against Leeds. 2 wins after that, and then we can get our flip-flops on and enjoy the rest of the season.
Happy days. And we can enjoy the WD18 Cup on the 23rd of March at West Start Sports Club. I tell you what, these links are getting good these days. The one bit of advice I'd give, echo what Sam and Charlie said about the rest of the season. And my bit of advice would be just mute every single WhatsApp group that doesn't have Watford fans in it, because the memes I'm being sent at the minute are just the worst. So that's one bit of advice that I would give anyway. But we'll be back this time next week, Sunday night, on WD18 to review that trip to Birmingham before the international break and before the WD18 Cup. Make sure if you want to get involved in the WD18 Cup, donate below in the description below.
Buy a raffle ticket.
Raffle ticket, £5, the auction as well. So thanks so much to everyone who's got involved and donated. So there might be a few more prizes on the way as well. And thanks so much for watching the stream today. Some great numbers. I know it can be a little bit repetitive talking about another managerial change, but I hope you enjoyed the video nonetheless. Make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to WD18, turn on your post notifications, follow the guys on their social channels, and we will see you next time. Have a great week and up the Hornets. You want.